What's going on, guys? Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you guys are new to our content, we create content like what you're watching right now simply to educate and engage individuals like yourselves on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. Now, my name is Captain Nostalgia. I am a writer, podcaster, and the director of our film festival called Horrific Hope. If you guys would like more information on what we do, our mental health resource library, podcasts, and more movie reviews like this, click the links in the show notes below. I decided to treat myself to a second viewing of Everything Everywhere All at Once. I highly recommend it. But my showing doesn't start for another hour, and I just got out of Men, and here are my initial spoiler-free thoughts. Before I even jump into talking about this movie, I do want to say that we will be putting out an episode full-length, spoiler-filled next week. So if you guys like what I had to say about this, I highly recommend you guys checking out this movie before next Wednesday when we release our full review. That said, let's go ahead and jump into this movie. Alright, so Men tells the story of Jessie Buckley's character Riley, who, following the death of her husband, rents a country house in order to just kind of heal and get away. In the country, she begins getting stalked by strange men and essentially gets ostracized and alienated by the community surrounding this getaway. Just say that Alex Garland, who most people might know from Ex Machina or Annihilation, wrote and directed this movie. This is his third movie, and this movie is breathtaking. Like, from a visual standpoint, this movie just looks absolutely chilling. Garland definitely took some of the signature visuals that he had with Annihilation and how beautiful that movie was, and definitely brought it back into Men. Part of the reason that Men is such a captivating visual movie is because it allows nature to breathe, and I feel like there's not a whole lot of movies that are being made nowadays outside of nature documentaries that really allow the green to just kind of have its say. That said, this movie, from a narrative standpoint, is one of the most uncompromising movies that I have seen in recent memory. And yes, I'm even including Ty West's X. Perhaps what I like about this movie is not only is it visually striking, but it's a film that, because of the visuals, also gets under your skin. There are truly some unsettling moments that happen and take place throughout the course of this movie. And perhaps the most haunting thing for me as a viewer is the fact that our protagonist is actually struggling with survivor's guilt. For anyone that's actually gone through survivor's guilt, I myself have gone through it. It is one of the hardest seasons of life, and it is one of the hardest, truly most unsettling things to come to grips with. When you take that element into Riley's character, but also at the same time the character journey that she ends up going through and the visuals that Garland brings into this, it is truly a film that masterfully picks up your flesh and naps underneath of it for an hour and 40 minutes. If you've seen Promising Young Woman, you know that it's a movie that also equally unsettling for some of its features, but also at the same time it has a stunning social commentary. Likewise, Men has that same thing. I can't get into it without spoilers, but in other ways it kind of runs parallel to Promising Young Woman in the way that it delivers its narrative and the way that it unfolds. So I will say, unlike Promising Young Woman, this is a lot more subtle in the message that it's trying to bring to viewers. Men is a movie that is meant to be studied because of how layered it is. But I'm also going to say that Jessie Buckley in this movie delivers a knockout performance. My only comparison for this is the movie that she did for Netflix a few years ago, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and she was incredible in that. Like, this performance for me is just absolutely jaw-dropping. It's just left me speechless from start to finish. Buckley's performance, Garland's visual style, along with his social commentary and just uncompromising vision for this movie, creates one of the most memorable films of the year. And as we reach the halfway point of this year, I can think it's safe to say that Men actually might be one of the best movies of the year. I will say with this movie that the first 2 acts of this movie are grounded in such a visual nature, and the film starts to progress towards needing a little bit of CGI as the third act begins and kind of crescendos to the climax. And this is kind of where the movie hits its weakest point. Remember that scene from 2017's It, where they're all in the garage and they're all kind of looking at trying to figure out where Pennywise is hiding out, and he comes through the projector and the CGI just looks so cringy. Imagine that in body horror, and that's the third act of, or at least almost all of the third act of this movie. It's a little cringy, and while it completes the story in a beautiful way, it is a sequence that feels really long to get to that finale, and it doesn't look pretty any step of the way. That said, let's go ahead and run this through the Rorschach rating scale. I honestly have to give this a 4.5 out of 5. I truly loved this movie. I think it is a striking commentary on men and women societal relations. I think that Jessie Buckley gives one of her best performances, and Alex Garland, this might be his best movie to date. I know that might be a little bit of a hot take, but this is very sincerely one of the best movies of 2022, and a truly unsettling film that I feel like deserves to be truly studied and dissected, to be appreciated to the level of something like Promising Young Woman or Get Out or Us. Yeah. Now it's time for our mental health moment. If you guys are new to our content, mental health moment is where we pretty much take a theme of mental health from the film which we are reviewing and dissect it for just a few moments in hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. One of the reasons that this movie is so important when you talk about mental health is because Riley's character goes through survivor's guilt of someone that loses someone close to her to suicide. I haven't seen any trailers for this movie, so if that's a minor spoiler, I apologize deeply in advance, but I think it is worth knowing coming into this movie just in case of any trigger. But also at the same time, this movie showcases not only what grief can do as far as manifestation, but also at the same time, the very real reality of going through survivor's guilt. There are still times every once in a while where even being 12 years removed from losing someone to suicide, I still feel a little bit of tinges every now and then from survivor's guilt, feeling like, could I have said something? Could I have done something differently? Could I have been more intentional about hanging out with this person? And it's a feeling that haunts you like a ghost. It is something that quite literally never leaves you, and you have to find a way to truly turn that into something either positive or negative. But in the end, I just want to let people know that are watching this that if you or someone you know has gone through or is currently undergoing survivor's guilt, that you're not alone. And with that, on the flip side, I also want to speak to anyone watching this right now that might be contemplating or considering suicide. Understand that you're not alone, and that there are resources available also in our show notes below. And yeah, please consider our show notes, the resources in our show notes, because you have value and you have worth. And let me just tell you, speak to you directly right now, that the pain that others will feel in your absence is an indescribable pain. Losing to someone to suicide is unlike anything else you can feel. It is quite literally the worst feeling I've ever felt in my life. And I don't know you, but I want to speak to that pain and say that hold on, because pain ends. There is hope. Thank you guys. I'll be back tomorrow talking about the new Chip and Dale movie. Have a good night.